On a storm-soaked Tuesday night in downtown Chicago, the Obsidian Room glowed like a glass fortress above the city. 45 floors of polished power where silence carried more weight than money. Elena Vance stepped toward table 4, balancing a tray and the exhaustion of a double shift, when she saw something that stopped her mid-stride. Johnny Thorne, the billionaire every magazine called untouchable, looked nothing like the man on those covers. His face was drained, his hands trembling under the dim amber light. Across from him sat an older man, Calder Royce, perfectly still, perfectly in control, as if the room itself obeyed him. Elena offered a polite smile. "Still or sparkling, gentlemen?" Calder didn't even glance at her. "Still. And don't interrupt us again." But Johnny did look straight at her, and in that locked stare something cracked open. His fingers brushed his chest, a motion so small the world might have missed it. "He didn't help me." A chill moved through her, not from fear alone, but from the clarity that she was the only person in the entire tower who understood what he had just said, and what it meant. And then Johnny's voice broke the silence. "Please don't leave." What happened after this moment would unravel everything they thought was safe. Like the video and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales for more gripping stories that hold you to the very last second. Rain streaked down the panoramic windows as Elena stood rooted beside the velvet partition, her tray trembling in her hands. The low amber lights cast long shadows over the Obsidian Room, turning every polished surface into a mirror that reflected her fear. Johnny Thorne's silent plea hadn't faded from her mind. It clung to her like the humidity in the air, heavy and impossible to ignore. Calder Royce's voice cut through the tension with the smooth cruelty of someone who had never been told no. "Elena," Arthur whispered from behind her. "Move. Table 7 is asking for." She didn't turn. "Arthur," she said softly. "Johnny signed for help." Arthur froze. "You're sure?" He didn't glance at his water. He didn't adjust his tie. "He signed." Her voice thinned. "And he's terrified." Before Arthur could respond, Calder's voice rose from the booth. "Waitress." The single word felt like a leash snapping tight. Elena turned, pushing down the tremor in her breath, and approached again. Johnny kept his gaze low, but the tension vibrating off him was unmistakable. Shoulders rigid, breath shallow, fingers twitching like they were fighting the urge to move again. Calder raised his glass without looking up. "Wine," he poured. The stem of the bottle clinked lightly against crystal, a sound too delicate for the storm brewing beneath the surface. Johnny whispered without lifting his head. "Please don't leave." Calder's eyes snapped to him. "She'll leave when I say she leaves." The shift in tone made the air tighten. Elena backed away, but her mind raced. Something was hidden under that table. Something more than fear. She stepped behind the partition, her pulse wild. "Arthur," she whispered, turning to him. "We need to call." But Calder's voice cut across the room. "Ooh. Water." It wasn't a request. It was a threat. Elena steadied herself and returned. As she reached for the glass, Johnny shifted, his hand edging toward the tablecloth. From her angle, she caught a glimpse of something metallic against Calder's lap. Not shaped like a gun, longer, cylindrical, with a faint red indicator blinking. Johnny's fingers brushed against the linen. New sign. Slower this time. "Danger." Under table. Her pulse kicked. Calder tapped the table twice. "You're losing focus, Johnny." "I don't like that." The billionaire nodded stiffly. I'm fine." Calder leaned in. "No, you're not. And you'll get worse if you test my patience." Elena stepped back, throat tight. She needed to act, but she couldn't act blindly. The older man's control was flawlessly engineered. Composture. Stillness like a predator. Every gesture calculated. She slipped behind the partition again. "Arthur. That man is armed." "And Johnny?" Arthur asked quietly. "He's being forced to sit still. Whatever's under that table. It's not a simple weapon." Arthur's face blanched. "We call the police." He reached for his phone. But Elena grabbed his wrist. If sirens show up, if Calder sees a uniform, Johnny might die instantly. Then what do we do? Arthur's voice was thinning into panic. We need someone who can watch without being seen. Elena looked toward the kitchen door. And we need them now. Moments later, a man in plain clothes entered. Tall, sharp-eyed, moving like someone used to stepping into chaos. He showed a badge briefly. Detective Rowan Hale. He didn't waste time. Show me the angle. Elena pointed subtly through the partition. Rowan followed her line of sight. And when he saw the cylinder under the table, his jaw tightened. That's not a gun, he murmured. That's a dispersal unit. Elena swallowed. Dispersal for what? Doesn't matter, Rowan said, voice low. If it goes off, this building won't be standing after cleanup. He stepped back. I'll call it in. But we move quietly. As Rowan ducked into a staff corridor, Elena pressed a hand to her collarbone, grounding herself. She inhaled deeply and returned to table 4. Her steps steady despite the shaking inside her. Calder was watching Johnny with predatory interest. You look pale, he said almost gently. Should I slow down? Johnny didn't answer. He just looked at Elena. Looked like someone clinging to the last reasonable hope. More water? She asked softly. Calder waved a dismissive hand. If it keeps him from passing out, give him the entire pitcher. Elena poured, her hand steady. She tilted just enough for a few drops to fall near Johnny's wrist. As she dabbed the cloth, she signed low near her hip, shielded from Calder. Help is coming. They come. Johnny gave the smallest nod. Calder lifted a brow. You two seem awfully coordinated. If Mr. Thorne needs anything, Elena replied evenly, I'm here to provide it. His eyes narrowed. I wonder if you can tell when someone's lying. Elena didn't blink. Every day, sir. Calder smirked. Then tell me, does Johnny look like a man who's going to obey? Johnny stiffened. Calder's hand dipped under the table. Elena felt the shift in the air. And then, Rowan's voice crackled quietly in her earpiece, the small one Arthur had slipped her seconds before. We need eyes. We need confirmation. Can you see the trigger mechanism? Elena tensed. Can I do this? She stepped back toward the booth. Excuse me, sirs. I noticed a spill earlier when refilling the glass. She crouched slightly. Let me check the tablecloth. Calder snapped. The tablecloth is fine. But she was already lowering enough to glimpse beneath. A wrist device on Calder's arm, blinking in sync with the cylinder. Trigger. Heartbeat monitor. Her breath stilled. Rowan's voice whispered into her ear. We need to disarm remotely. But we need time. Calder leaned down, suddenly suspicious. What exactly are you trying to see down there? She rose quickly. Apologies. It won't happen again. See that it doesn't. He reclined, but tension rippled through him. Johnny whispered, barely audible. He's watching everything. I know, she breathed. And then everything shifted at once. Rowan emerged from the staff corridor, gesturing discreetly. Elena slipped away toward him. Tell me you saw something, he demanded. It's tied to his pulse, she said. If he panics, if he drops his arm, if he dies. It detonates, Rowan finished. Classic dead man system. What do? We buy time. More agents are coming. A negotiation is coming. But you. He pointed at her gently. You are the only one Calder allows within 5 feet. We need you. Elena stared back, heart pounding. If I make one wrong move. He kills everyone, Rowan said plainly. Including Johnny. Her breath trembled. And then she nodded. I'll try. When she returned to table 4, Johnny lifted his gaze slightly. Something new flickered there, a thread of guilt. Elena, he murmured, voice fraying. I'm sorry. For what? For dragging you into this. She shook her head. You didn't drag me. You asked for help. Calder tapped the table. Enough whispering. He leaned forward. Johnny, if you don't start the transfer in the next 10 minutes, I'll assume you're tired of negotiating. Johnny's voice cracked. I'm trying. Calder smiled. Try harder. Johnny's breath faltered. Elena recognized the signs. The panic rising, the involuntary spike in heartbeat. A spike that could kill them all. She leaned in urgently. Mr. Thorne, she said, tone firm but gentle. Would you like coffee? Something warm. Something steady. He blinked rapidly. He understood. Something steady meant keep your breathing slow. Yes, he whispered. Calder rolled his eyes. Fine. Coffee. Black. Elena left just as Rowan approached her again, voice low. You saw his watch. That's our key. He keeps staring at Johnny, she said. If I can distract him. We only need seconds, Rowan replied. If you can get him to move his arm away from the device, or expose the underside, we might break the signal long enough to intercept. Seconds, she repeated. That's all. That's all, Rowan said. But Elena, if he notices, he'll shoot first. She inhaled deeply. I'll make sure he doesn't. Moments later, she returned with the coffee service. The aroma drifted through the air, a warm contrast to the cold tension strangling the room. She set the pot down. Your coffee, sir. Calder didn't move. He simply extended his wrist. His dominant one with the trigger device. Pour. Elena stepped toward him, watching how the watch blinked with each pulse. She reached for the pot. And then, Johnny suddenly coughed, reaching toward his throat. Calder's head whipped toward him. What now? Elena seized the shift. She tipped the coffee pot slightly, letting a thin ribbon of steam drift upward. It fogged Calder's watch for a second. Just enough. Rowan murmured through the earpiece. Now. Keep it there 3 seconds 4. Calder jerked his hand back. Careful. Apologies, Elena said softly. But Rowan whispered, breathless. We got it. We have the heartbeat feed. Elena swallowed. Calder leaned back, suspicious again. You're jumpy tonight. Long shift, she answered. He hummed. For your sake, I hope it ends soon. Her stomach tightened. Johnny whispered, voice quivering. Elena, don't stay here. She shook her head. I'm not leaving you. Calder slammed his hand against the table. Enough. Crystal rattled. The room went silent. His voice dropped to a chilling whisper. You will finish the transfer now. Or I end this night with a single tap. Johnny's breath hitched. Elena felt the heat of panic rising again, the very thing that could kill them all. She stepped between them slightly. Mr. Royce, she said calmly, your coffee is getting cold. He stared at her. Then something shifted in his expression. You're not afraid, he murmured. I'm doing my job. He leaned closer. No. You're trying to delay me. The words sliced the air. Rowan whispered urgently through the earpiece. Do not react. He's testing you. Elena held her ground. I'm here to serve, sir. Calder narrowed his eyes, then smirked. We'll see. He turned to Johnny. Transfer. Now. Johnny's hand hovered over his tablet, trembling so violently he nearly dropped it. Mr. Thorne, Elena said quickly. Would you like sugar? Calder barked a laugh. He doesn't need sugar. He needs obedience. But Johnny's eyes flicked to Elena. Silent message. Plea. Calder's fingers shifted toward the trigger. The tension snapped like a pulled wire. At that moment, Rowan whispered sharply. Elena, move him. Distract him. Anything. She stepped closer to Calder, voice bold for the first time. Sir, she said sharply. That watch, your pulse just spiked. You might want to breathe slower. Calder stiffened. What did you say? Your heart rate, she said clearly. It's climbing. His eyes widened. How would you know? Elena pointed subtly to the blinking rhythm on his watch. Calder snarled. Back away. But in that split second of fixation, one heartbeat of lost attention, Johnny moved. He pushed himself out of the booth, stumbling backward, ripping the tablecloth just inches. Calder jerked around. No! His pulse spiked. The monitor flashed red. Rowan shouted through the earpiece. We have it, we broke the loop for 2 seconds, jamming now. Alarms went off, silent ones only the team heard. Elena lunged toward Johnny, dragging him behind the partition just as Calder slammed his hand on the trigger. And nothing happened. For the first time, Calder looked afraid. Rowan burst into the dining room with 2 plainclothes agents behind him, guns drawn but lowered to avoid panic. Calder Royce, he said coldly, your system is compromised. Step away from the device. Calder's face twisted with rage. You think you've won. Rowan's eyes hardened. You lost the moment she walked to this table. Calder grabbed the cylinder, lifting it slightly. Elena screamed. No, don't move it. But Calder shook with fury. If I go down, everyone goes down. He raised it. And Rowan fired. Singular precise shot. It tore through Calder's shoulder, breaking his grip, sending the cylinder skidding across the polished floor. Agents swarmed. Shouts echoed. Metal clattered. Calder was forced to the ground, face pressed into marble, the watch ripped from his wrist. And as Elena watched him hauled to his feet, blood streaking his cuff, eyes burning with hatred, she knew. This was far from over. Because Calder wasn't just trying to kill Johnny. He wanted something bigger. Something still hidden. And when the agents opened the cylinder to disarm it fully, what they found inside made Rowan swear under his breath. Microdrive. Encrypted. Labeled with one name. When the encrypted drive finally revealed the truth, the entire narrative shifted. Calder hadn't simply wanted control. He had spent decades rewriting the past, burying every betrayal he'd caused. Seeing those files exposed line by line gave Elena a clarity she hadn't expected. She realized his cruelty had never been about power alone. It had been about fear. Fear of a world that kept moving without him. Johnny stood beside her as agents carried the ruined cylinder away. His clothes were still torn, his voice strained, yet the weight he'd carried for years seemed lighter now. If you hadn't seen me, he murmured, none of this would have surfaced. Elena shook her head. You weren't the only one trapped. Her words surprised them both. But they were true. She had spent years shrinking herself, making her voice smaller to survive. Tonight she hadn't whispered. She had stepped forward. In the weeks that followed, hearings were held, statements recorded, and Calder faced a fate he could no longer manipulate. Johnny rebuilt the shattered spaces of his company, and Elena found her own direction. Steady, deliberate, no longer shaped by fear. She didn't need applause to know she'd changed. She could feel it every time she lifted her chin a little higher. And on the night the city lights reflected across the river, she passed the obsidian room and saw a faint glimmer etched into the new glass, an emblem of a hand, catching the glow as if reminding her how far she'd come. If this story moved you like the video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales to help our channel grow.